take over the session, the power session. Dr. Parekh was, he is the chairman of IRADE. He's been a distinguished person right throughout his career. He was conferred the Padma Bhushan in 2009. He shared the Nobel Prize in 2007, given jointly to the IPCC authors, and was a review editor of IPCC 3 and IPCC 5. He was a member of the Economic Advisory Council of 5 Prime Ministers of India: Atal Bihari Vajpayee, P.V. Narasimha Rao, Chandrasekhar, V.P. Singh, and Rajiv Gandhi. As the member of Planning Commission in charge of energy and water, he is the principal architect of India's official integrated energy policy. He's done his he's been declared an illustrious alumni of the Decade of India by MIT's US, and as distinguished alumnus in IIT Kharagpur. Right, sir. Thank you. We would request you to take over for the power session, and as and when Mr. Behra gets to is able to join, then in between, whenever it permits, we can ask or Mr. Behra can speak, sir. Is that all right, sir?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Batra. And let us begin. I think without spending any time, I will request Vinay to make a presentation on the power sector study. And Vinay, please try to be to the point and within your time limit. Please go ahead. Vinay Saini.
Yeah. Good morning, sir. Am I audible to everyone?
Yes.
Yeah, good. So good morning. I will be doing the theme setting presentation. So our focus will be enabling state level actions for NDC in Odisha for power sector. So already Dr. Parekh has in the inaugural session mentioned about the 2 goals that we are particularly looking at. If I talk about the Odisha's emission, within the total emission, energy sector contributes 45%. And within that 45% of energy, power generation represents 83% of the total emission. So power sector is an important part if we want to talk about reducing emission. We have identified 4 key areas apart from other areas through which we can decrease emission. The first is increasing the share of RE and implementation of RPOs. Then improving efficiency of the power system. Captive capacity shift is also an important aspect. And also increasing reliability of the power system so that no more captive capacities are added. Now, if I talk about the present status of Odisha's power sector, it's primarily coal-based capacities that represent the power system, followed by hydro capacities and a small amount by RE capacities. So if I talk about the RE status for 2022, as per the government of Odisha's RE policy, their RE target is 2.7 gigawatt by 2022. From that, they are expected to meet about 1.2 gigawatt of RE installation. So we are expecting a shortfall of 56% in the total RE by 2022. Apart from RE installation, if you see the state RPO targets in achievement, there also we are observing some shortfalls. And in the years 2017-18, the gap is increasing, and it's almost more than 5% from the state RPO target versus the achievement. Some of the major hurdles in the RE sector that we observed while talking to the stakeholders is the high opportunity cost of moving to RE due to the existing PPAs with thermal power plants that the Odisha DISCOMs are having. Then the cheaper average cost of electricity from the existing power sources such as coal power plant and hydro resources. Another important aspect is the weak economic condition of DISCOMs. I guess that's quite evident for most of the DISCOMs in India these days. Also, less RE potential in the state than predicted. During the RE potential calculation, the state assumed a land availability of 2%. But when we interacted with the stakeholders in Odisha, we found that land availability is a major issue. Specifically for high RE potential areas, they are located in forest and agriculture areas. So that's why land availability is an issue. Apart from that, right of way is also an issue for project implementation. Now I will talk about some of these analysis that we have done in detail, just to touch upon to give you an understanding that what we have been doing. We did a study. We did an analysis to see what kind of emission reduction can be done by 2030 if we change the share of RE in the grid and also the fuel efficiency. For doing that, we assume certain scenario. The first scenario is the base scenario, wherein we assume that the RE capacity of 1.2 gigawatt will be installed in the grid by 2030. This is as per the GridCo tariff order. And in different scenario, we assume that this RE share is going to increase. Apart from that, we have also assumed that the old thermal power plant will be retired as per the National Electricity Plan, as per the government plans. And also there will be expansion of supercritical capacities as per the requirement. So these are the different scenarios we have considered. Now for 2030, we have assumed the electricity demand as per the 19th EPS for Odisha. So when we solve all those things, we found that the total emission in the base scenario is something around 50 million ton, and it reduces according to the share of RE and retirement of thermal power plants under different scenarios. This is going to help us in achieving and reducing the specific emission factor. In the base, it is 0.83, and in the highest RE penetration scenario, it can reduce to 22%. So that kind of potential is there if we increase the RE share in the grid and also retire the old and inefficient power plants. Further, if I talk about the goal for achievement, if for doing that, we need a minimum RE capacity of 3.5 gigawatt in the grid by 2030 to achieve the goal 4. Apart from the RE capacity, we also look at the captive capacity. Captive, as discussed in the inaugural session, is very important for Odisha. And why we did this analysis, I just explained you. In the total state capacity, 5 gigawatt of installed capacity. Apart from that, there is a 9.9 gigawatt of captive thermal capacities in Odisha, in addition to the state capacity. So it's almost double. That's why we need to talk about captive if we are talking about Odisha's power system. For doing our analysis, we have analyzed 35 coal-based captive power plants, which represent 7 gigawatt of installed capacity. Almost 70% of the installed thermal captive power plants we have analyzed. The calculated emission factor for those captive power plants is 1.1 kg CO2 per unit, which is 30% higher than the Odisha's grid emission factor. Because in Odisha grid, there is the share of coal, hydro, and all those things. That's why the emission factor is low for the grid as a whole. Some of the major assumptions we have assumed for this study is that we have assumed the emission factors from the CA data, and also we have not considered the waste heat recovery boiler and cogen plants for this analysis. Our major scenario assumption is that we are assuming that for a particular year, when we are trying to shift the captive capacity to the grid utilizes its surplus capacities. Then if it's further required to meet the captive demand, it puts an additional super thermal power plant. Side by side, it also retires the old and inefficient power plants, and also in certain cases, certain scenarios, it adds the solar capacity. So I will show you some of the outcomes of this analysis. So if I talk about the emission from power sector for the year 2018-19, if those captive capacities has been shifted to the grid in 18-19, what could have been the savings in CO2 emissions? So in the base case, when there is no shift of captive capacity, the emission was 82 million ton in 18-19. If you shift the captive capacities and additional requirement to the super thermal or supercritical power plant, the emission reduction will be 9 million ton. If same is reduced, the captive is shifted to super thermal power plant as well as the retirement of old inefficient power plant, the savings is 10 million ton. Similarly, in other scenarios where we are reducing the we are shifting the captive capacity to super thermal plants, we are retiring the power plant, as well as we are adding solar generations. So we are able to reduce different emissions. And in the last scenario, if you it's a hypothetical scenario, and if you assume that all the additional capacities requirement is done met through solar installation, then the emission reduction is the highest. It's almost 40% reduction than the base scenario. So this kind of analysis shows the potential that we can have in reducing the CO2 emission from shifting captive capacities. Now, for achieving those kind of shifts, we require some capacity installation. For in different scenarios, the thermal capacity requirement will range from 4 gigawatt to 2 gigawatt, and the solar capacity installation will be requirement will range from 9 gigawatt to 18 gigawatt. The capacity of solar installation is higher because of the lower PLFs. And this is going to help us in reducing the emission factor reduction of almost 40% if we compare with the complete solar replacement of captive capacities. Now, this is all about what kind of savings we can have in terms of emissions, but what is the economic reason why the captive are not shifting to the grid? So we did some tariff calculations for a captive power plant, which is 10-year-old and which is established in the year 1890. For an old power plant, the tariff that we found is around 4 rupees per unit. And for a new power plant, which is established in 1819, the tariff is going to be 4.75 for a captive power plant. Now, if I compare this with the electricity they are getting from the grid, for an HT and EST connection, the average per unit price is 5.8 rupees per unit. So if our captive power plant is going to shift to the HT or EST connection in the present scenario, he is going to make an annual loss of around 196 crore, depending on if it's an old power plant, and if it is a new power plant, new captive power plant, he is going to make a loss of around 114 crores per annum. Even if I reduce the the grid power price to the average cost of supply of 4.89, then also for different assumptions, the captive power plant are going to incur some losses. So this is the reason why we are not seeing much of the captive power plant shifting to the grid because of this economic reasons. Apart from those analyses, we have also looked into how we can improve the efficiency of the distribution system. As in the inaugural session, many of the key speakers spoke about the high AT&C losses. We also observed the similar thing. The AT&C losses in Odisha are higher than the average AT&C losses of India. Now, some of the key reasons that we are able to find out is the high losses in LT division. The LT division, the low tension division in Odisha, represent 53% of the total sales in Odisha. And some of the key reasons that we are able to identify are presented in this table. And some of the reason is like the low billing efficiency, or we can say average collection efficiency, and a somewhat defective meter supply are some of the reasons that leads to high AT&C losses in the LT division. Apart from LT division, we also see there are losses from the agriculture consumer, because 53% of the billed energy is not realized from the agriculture consumer, and also around 38% of the energy is supplied through defective meter.
Yeah.
Apart from that, we also observe that low accountability due to less number of audits is a reason for high AT&C losses in Odisha. Now, we did a case study only for CESU because of the data availability and data limitation. And we try to find what kind of emission savings we can have if we are able to reduce only the technical losses in the DISCOMs. So in the year 17-18, the thermal energy purchase of all the DISCOMs in Odisha was 18 billion units, which represent an emission of around 18 million tons, considering the emission factor of Odisha thermal power plant of around 1 kg CO2 per unit. Now, if I talk about CESU in 2017-18, their total energy purchase of thermal was 6.2 billion units, representing an emission of 6.3 million ton of CO2. And we have assumed the technical losses of CESU as 20% in the cumulative AT&C losses of 38% in the FY year 17-18. This is based on some of the filings by CESU to the OERC for its ARR 2016-17. Now, if we reduce this technical losses from 20% to 10%, we can save an emission reduction. We can achieve an emission reduction of 0.6 million ton CO2 in the FY 17-18 itself. So this shows the kind of potential that we can get only if we reduce the technical losses. Now, based on this analysis and some interaction with the stakeholders, we have some policy suggestion. The first and foremost is about tariff rationalization. We suggest that we should have some cost reflective tariff for industries. If you talk about the current number,
mic is working now. Because I can see that on the speaker rather than Islam was not covering earlier. Looks like it has. Can you hear me on this thing?
Sir, shall I complete? Then we can hear your views.
Yeah, I think you complete
Are you,
this because
Yes.
you're
are
almost
you able
over
to hear me now?
to the end of it. And then
Yes,
we will
yes.
have Mr. Behra.
Yes,
huh?
yes. Mr. Behra, we just have you in 1 minute. And let me just complete. So if I talk about the
Right.
current
No,
numbers,
let him finish. Let him finish.
yes, yes. The current EST, we have to reduce the current ST and EST tariffs by almost 30% to achieve a breakthrough compared to the captive tariffs. And also, why industry? Because electricity is a large part of industry spending, and it will make more. It will make them more competitive also. Now, why DISCOM should be doing this thing is that because for the industry segments, the losses, the technical and commercial losses are quite low compared to the LT division. This will also help the DISCOMs in better utilization of the state capacities, and it may also help the DISCOMs to come out of financial distress. Now, if I talk, we also suggest another market-based mechanism is emission factor-based cap and trade scheme for power plants, including captive power plants. In this scheme, we want to have some cappings only on the emissions from power plant units. And this kind of scheme is going to help us in retirement of inefficient thermal power plants, which are emitting more emissions, and also promote better utilization of efficient power plants in the system. Then some of the other suggestions we like to say is that we observe that land is a major issue in RE penetration in Odisha. So we will suggest that why not the government stakeholders look at the implementation of canal top solar PV plants in Odisha. And why this kind of suggestion? Because Odisha is having large amount of big hydropower plants and also huge canal network. So they can utilize that land on the canals to put the solar canal top solar PV plants. Another thing to look into is to ensure timely payments for RE contracts. That's all from my side, and some of the aspect that I will request the panelists to talk upon, apart from what they plan to speak, is what additional is required from the captive power plants, like what additional the DISCOM should provide to them, so that not all, but at least some captive can shift to the grid, what kind of expectation they have from the DISCOMs, how feasible are the cost reflective tariffs, because DISCOMs are losing the industry consumer either through captive or through the open access. Now, another important issue that we would like to, the panelists to talk upon is how to scale RE in the Odisha if land is a major issue. What is the potential option that we can look into, and what are the challenges that the grid face in integrating solar grid-based solar and also the solar rooftop in Odisha, and what is the potential of cap and trade kind of mechanism in Odisha. And at the last, would also like to hear upon like how to reduce AT&C losses. That's all from my side, and now I request Dr. Kirit Parekh to take over.
Yeah, thank you, Vinay. I think you have raised a number of issues, and we really look forward to the feedback from Odisha officials who know more about the state and can really have a little better understanding of this. Okay, let us then get to the discussion, and I think we have raised a number of point issues, and I would really invite people to give some comments on it. One of the points that Mr. Garg raised is, should we have the same RPO for all states? Or if some states have more different resource base, should it have different? And how should Orissa really increase or meet his RPO compliance? I'm really looking forward to comments on this subject from various people. Anybody?
No, there is a session with the next speaker you can invite.
Oh,
Sharmila, invite the next speaker.
Okay. So we now it is basically now the panel discussion, and the certain questions which.
Oh, I see. So let me really invite the panelist, Mr. Santosh Das. would you like to make your comments? Mr. Santosh Das.
I think Vinay can put up those questions again on the screen for the panelists to see and answer.
Yes, am I audible to all?
Yes, yeah, very clearly.
Yes. Good morning to everybody, and I was also hearing the inaugural session, and I'm really honored to be in the part of this August gathering, and such eminent people they are in this particularly for the mitigation of the climate change issue. And I also heard the talk of our principal secretary, Dhal Sahu, has already enlightened about the Odisha power scenario. And it is true that in Odisha, 65% power is generated and consumed by the captive power plant industries. And only 35% is in the non-captive sites. And particularly in our, under the energy department, we are from the engineering chief electricity office, particularly looking after the tax collection or the electricity duty collection from the consumers, and the more share is being collected from the captive consumers. That is why all the generations of the captive consumers we closely watch. And in your analysis, your project that presentation was really very nice and critically analyzed. I'm really surprised it's a very good presentation. And Odisha power sector has been critically analyzed from the captive as well as from in the distribution sector. And you have in the analysis, I think the figures 35 captive industries have been taken. But for our context, we always watch scan 80 to around industries, those who are having captive power plant 1 megawatt and above. And so most surprising statistics is that out of that 81 industries, one particular category of industry, that is aluminum sector, they generate 55% of the total captive consumption, and the 38% is being generated by iron and steel industries. And in the Odisha, in aluminum sector, only 8 industries, they are contributing this, the generation of power 55%, almost. In this particular last year, if we see near about 47,000 something million units is being consumed by the captive power plants, by the 82 industries having captive power plants. And these 8 aluminum industries are actually almost 55% and slightly more than the half of the total consumption. The iron and steel industries, they are 56 in numbers. So my point is, a few points I will suggest for the policy changes. The Regulatory Commission has already assigned whatever the RPO obligation from the solar and non-solar. If I am quoting the ambitious target from the RE policy 2016, solar we have given 2200 megawatt and non-solar is 550 megawatt. So for that, I can only suggest those who are having the captive power plants, they should be given priority in setting up of either solar or non-solar RE projects for their captive use. Then only what will happen, the cost of generation will be optimized by them because they will consume themselves. That is one point. The other points are, as because we are also the nodal offices for the development of small hydro, from my last 1 decade experience, I have seen development of small hydro is not a very big problem from the financial point of view and for the development point of view. Unlike big hydro, major hydro, these small hydro can be developed within very few short periods. The gestation period is very short, 2 to 3 years. And already by this time, we have in running operation conditions 3 small hydro, that is totally 57 megawatt. And very recently, one more small hydro having 24 megawatt has been commissioned in this month only, and last month only, August. So from that point of view, I can say the development of small hydro is also possible. Only problem with that development is the single window clearance, because that needs only as MOEF clearance, forest clearance, as well as our internal clearance, and particularly from the water resources. This interdepartment coordination is required. Otherwise, there is no issue in development of small hydro. And in the RE policy 2016, it has been envisaged that 150 megawatt is to be developed by 2022. We have a lot of small hydro projects in our hand. Already MOU has been signed. If we give and facilitate them, they can easily be commissioned or constructed by the targeted period. And already 3-4 projects are in pipeline that can also come up. That from one side, that is from the supply intervention. In the demand side intervention, we are also the state designated agency of Bureau of Energy Efficiency. We are just extended hand of Bureau of Energy Efficiency. We are doing a lot of work since it is created in 2005. There are 2-3 issues also I would like to inform you all that like in the lighting sectors, the LED technology, when it came to be in the place in the power sector, it has actually revolutionized many things. In the beginning, you may be aware of that the cost of one LED bulb was very high and the common people was not able to afford that particular technology. In the meantime, a very novel idea came and the government of India also put forward that through an EESL, they popularized one Ujala scheme. Through that Ujala scheme, near about 5 crores LED 9-watt bulb was sold. And maybe because of that, in last 2 years, we have seen the load growth is not much. So like that, I will also suggest the same way, the market intervention, market base. Initially, what happened in the Ujala scheme, actually it was thought that all consumers will be given Ujala, that LED bulb, 9-watt LED bulb, so that the cost of the bulb will be recovered through the monthly electricity billings. But it was delayed, and once then the thought came it will be sold upfront, because the cost of that bulb has reduced to 80 rupees, 70, then subsequently 70 rupees, and really it was a success story, I think, totally in India. Like that, I can just suggest the same way, if the agriculture pumps can be available to the farmers, then I think it will be a success story in the demand side management. And in the meantime, also as a part of our assignment in the agriculture sector, near about 3,700 pumps we have funded to the Lift Irrigation Corporation to replace the inefficient pumps, and that has been also done. So like these 2-3 points I would like to add in this, and the rest of the things, one more thing I can also add last, the state sector, this should not be given, I think the captive power owner, they should be given priority to solar plants, not the the state sector should invest in other way, because to reduce 1% AT&C loss, I think now at present in Odisha it costs, if we save 1% AT&C loss, it costs near about 113 crores. So that way state sector should invest in that capping or the saving the AT&C loss or improving the AT&C loss, and the private players should come to add in the solar RE project. In that way, RE generation will be more, as well as the RPO compliance will be met. Thank you very much. This is from my side, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Das, who is an engineering and principal chief electrical inspector of Odisha, and was the head of the Odisha Dispatch Center. Thank you very much. I now request Bhadresh Bhai Bachubhai Mehta, Chief Load Dispatcher, State Load Dispatch Center, Bhubaneswar, to give his
Vinay, I shall request you to kindly allow me to share
comments.
the
Mehta?
last three, four pieces.
Yeah, please. let's do that.
Whether it is visible to all, sir? Hello?
Your screen
Yes.
is not visible, sir.
Yeah. Good afternoon.
Mehtaji,
It's
you
my-
would like to put on your video?
No, I think this is my in order. I will hardly take 5 minutes to just share this data. Then I will once again go to Vinay's slide for comments from our end, sir.
Okay, but there are no slides which are visible. You have to show a presentation.
No, it's a small data sheet only, sir, not more.
Yeah, we are not able to see it, just so you'll have to upload it.
I have uploaded it. I have shared it also, sir. That is what I am asking Vinay. Vinay, is
No.
it visible to all?
No,
no,
sir.
we are not able. No.
It's not
So-
visible, sir.
Once
Do you
again,
have
I
you
will do
sent it to have you sent it to Sharmishta?
No, I can share from my end, na, sir.
Yes, yes.
No, but then there is some problem in sharing
Sir,
from
you
your
have to
end.
first press the share screen button.
I press it share screen button.
Yes, and then, sir, you have to just go to optimize those two small
Is
boxes.
it now?
No.
Share screen, application window or entire screen. Yes, now share. Now I will go to the my sheet. Now how it is?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Now
You
you
can
can
see
see
it.
that. Okay.
So good afternoon, sir. It's just I'm thankful to extending an opportunity to share my views with such a dignitary and high level professional team to talk about the NDC with respect to India as well as the Odisha as a specific case. Just to sensitize the issue, if we look back to the Paris Agreement and certain pledge and target decided so far, so by 2030, it was between the 33 to 35% below the 2005 emission intensity of the GDP by 2030. In that, there are conditional targets for the non-fossil also. There is condition for transfer of technology and low-cost international finance, including GCF, sorry, and conversions not special, but the LULUC was also decided about the use of land for this purpose. It means like this: land use change, and forestry is a category when within the United Nations framework convention for the climate change. I would like to stress upon this that India has ratified the Paris Agreement exactly 1 year after the submission of it, of intended nationality determined contributions on by October 2016. And since India did not submit the NDC prior to ratification, we become the first NDC to introduce the following main elements. We had call upon reduce the emission intensity GDP by 33 to 35% 2030. We intend to increase the share of non-fossil based energy resource up to 40% of the installed electric power supply capacity of 2030 with the help of transfer of technology and low cost international finance, including from the Green Climate Fund. And we also plan to create an additional cumulative carbon sink of 2.5 to 3 GTCO2 through additional forest and tree coverage by 2030. So this is very massive step planned by the government, and various institutions are working upon it. If we see the copper engineering accord also, there are certain by 2020 some target has been set, and coverage was excluding agriculture sector, and longest term goals were also established thereafter. So if we go to the now specific to the Odisha state, the adopting energy and power sector meet for NDC target. Now to reduce the emission intensity of GDP by given specific 33 to 35%, maximum RE share in the power generation with vital, we have two nodal agencies in the state of Odisha, ODEA and JADCO. So we maximize the energy generation potential. At present, our installation is hardly 358 megawatt of the capacity. We are highly promoting the, just my president informed about this and recent synchronization of a small hydro project So we promote the small and medium term hydro projects, and as on today, it is around 81 megawatt. Earlier it was 57 megawatt. Now we also harness the wind generation, biomass, biogas, and plan manual management thing also, waste to energy stream also. And we also started developing the land bank database so as to facilitate the private developer to tap and identify the land and site for developing the solar park, hybrid RE project, hassle-free at a low cost. These are certain things which has been planned by the government to promote this and to meet the commitment made so far. If we see the India's share, RE share in the generation, sir, with respect to RPO trajectory, it is around, 1 second. Sir, it is around this, in the 2021, the solar is about 8.75 and wind is around 10.25. This is long-term RPO trajectory with respect to country. And next year, 21-22, it is planned 10.5 for solar and wind both as a collectively. Now, with respect to state, if you see, it is we are also increasing in a not exponentially exactly, but quite significantly. If RE electricity generation trend, the RE electricity in billion unit, if we see, it has increased very 120 billion unit we have crossed so far. With respect to percentage, it has touched just around 24-25%. For state of the Odisha, adopting the energy and power sector to meet the NDC target, Odisha is increasing RE share in generation. We have targeted 40% of our electric installed capacity by 2030. If we see how much we have done so far, year-wise increase RE capacity. If we see this July, this is the latest data we have. We have close to about 522 megawatt of the RE installation, with a state sector and private sector and central sector breakup also. And this other is thermal and hydro capacity stands also. Previous to this, it was around 512. Sorry, it is running. During 2019 July, it was 512 megawatt. Last year, 2018, it was 225. So there is a massive rise in the private sector for the solar investment, and it is gradually picking up. If we see the 2018 January, almost 2 years before, it was hardly less than 200 megawatt. So we are trying to reduce the thermal generation emission by adopting the supercritical technology for reducing coal consumption per megawatt generation from 1 metric ton per 1 million MWH to 0.88 metric ton to MWH. We have improved boiler efficiency and renovation of the boilers at our state-owned Genco OPGC. Setting up the clean technology by choosing quality coal and wash away, means wash colliery have been adopted. Proper utilization of the fly ash through the mission, means the exhaust fly ash is used for the road construction, brick making, etc. And we diverting the dependency on thermal generation to the clean generation like renewable hydro. Fortunately, we are blessed with a sizable hydro setup close to around 2000 megawatt in the state of Odisha. So we are diverting our dependency like this. Now, if we see the analysis of the RPO, which has met so far, this is a 1920 sheet. This RPO non-solar, the trajectory given, target given by the Honorable Commission was about 5.5%, and it is about 1356 million unit. With existing capacity of 306, RPO target met was around 810. So non-solar RPO complied up to March 20 is 3.20. So it is less than what target we got. So we need to buy the RECs, and also we are also as a state level we are getting up the data from the other CGP and other plants who are also supposed to meet the RPO compliance. The large hydro projects has a capacity of 79 megawatt and we get about 126 million unit of the RPO. The biomass, a small 20 megawatt setup is there. Wind is very limited and solar is for 37 megawatts. So by total, we are just touching the 5%, 5.18% to be very precise, RPO trajectory. And for the 2021, it is targeted to around 7.49 with some breakup I have given. This year it is not declared by Honorable Commission, so we have just followed the previous year's guidelines so far. Now, we also try to reduce the PNB losses and improving the distribution network system. That is very important over here. That recently one of our DISCOM has been entrusted to Tata as a TPCODL, and various scheme of ODSSP, SCRAPE and ODSIP, smart grid, and strengthening of the infrastructure is taken place. And this will going to give us a good fruits and result. Once these projects are in operation, it is going to be complete within a year or two. And then also we stress upon the improving the energy efficiency by Odisha Energy Conversion Building Code has been put up, and which is directly proportional to the reduction in the generation. We also have a planning and preparing the demand side management line by the states, and there we will be having significant economic and reliability environment benefit by modification of the consumer demand pattern for the energy through various means and methods such as financial incentive, behavior change through education, etc. And also we are having capacity building for energy audit and proper energy monitoring and training of the people. We are adopting the advanced metering system under various the government of funded projects. So AMI and smart meters are have been already put or are in pipeline to put, and our one of the city, Roorkela, has been awarded for the smart grid by the government of India, and we are working very closely for that. We have also awareness building on conservation of energy, and we have formed a cell for that. And we are also adopting the energy and power sector, this promoting solar water pumps in the agriculture sector that my previous successor said. Vinay, you may kindly share these your slides, so I will have some of the points to share for that. I will stop sharing this.
Sure, sir.
I've done. I'll stop it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mehta. This was a very interesting and very educational discussion. Insights into Odisha's power sector and what the state government is doing in a variety of ways for meeting the NDC targets and RPO, etc. Maybe now, may I now request the next speaker,
Sir,
he wanted Rajiv Agarwal.
Sir, he wanted to say something on this slide of Vinay.
Oh, I see.
I would
Please
like
go
to have
ahead.
a couple of words on this slide, sir. So the
Please go ahead.
first
I
point
thought you
is
were.
about this our captive industry ready to shift to the grid and tariff and politics. Sir, we are highly working upon that. So let me honestly admit the reality that Orissa is having say around 10,000 megawatt of the captive installation, and our installed capacity half of that. And with that very less consumption by the industry from the state generation, we are having surplus power, tied up capacity with the central project, and we are having very much compulsion of bearing the huge fixed charge burden of the central sector like NTPC projects. And it hampers our per unit cost of power to serve. So we try to sell, we are aggressively marketing sell our power through power exchange and various other means. So one of the alternative we are trying to evaluate how best we can transfer this power to our captive industries. And we encourage in such a way that they use their captive plant less. We are trying to determine the optimum tariff and considering various regulation rules available, cross subsidy and electric duty, and so many things are there in picture. So we'll come to that. What we nutshell plan is that there will be a special tariff which will allow the industries to adopt, and they will have a win-win situation, and the state Odisha will have also some benefit out of permitted transaction of power within the state itself. So that will cover the feasibility of implementing cost reflective tariff. This will probably be feasible in a month or two. And now to scale up the RE, sir, this penal top solar is one of the alternative. Administratively, or if you see from the first set, it sounds very good. I had worked with Gujarat in past, sir. So what happens, the cantilever cost of the penal top is very high compared to cost of penal sometimes, sir. So if the span of the canal is, the width of the canal is very high, then probably this does not come as a cost-effective solution. So we have to take a call. If it is a narrow span canal, then a canal top is effective and the cost is not much, and we can use that piece of roof. But floating solar is definitely an attractive and adaptable mechanism. And fortunately, Odisha has a number of reservoirs, large number of reservoirs with large catchment area, and NTPC is seriously working upon it. They have one pilot floating solar project at the Gujarat Kavas power plant, and there I had visited. The cost is likely to come down. There also some additional cost is there for floaters. But that will be, to best of my knowledge, that will be a good proposition to adopted in the future by the state of Odisha. And challenge for rooftop solar and solar grid, that we have to take use this aggressive call on that, and that is feasible. Only the radiation level is not in line with other states, so probably the per unit generation for per square feet or per kilowatt installation by the families will not be that much, but it is going to pay them in a long run. So that will be a good incentive wise scheme, and that should come forward with aggressiveness. And how efficient will be the trap and trade mechanism for promoting new capacity? Sir, honestly speaking, my personal view, sir, we have enough CGP which is hampering the business of the DISCOM, so probably we should not at least I should not say we should discourage, but we should not encourage them, and we have to always give them some rule so that the use of power available at the DISCOM should be utilized more. The days where in the old days before 10 years or so, sir, the state may not have that much resource to give industry the continuous power 24/7 quality with needed megawatt capacity. But today the scenario has changed. So we are of the opinion that industry should be our consumer, and we are ready to give them 24/7 uninterrupted power with a quality. So that is what I need to say. And how to reduce AT&C losses? We have a very aggressive planning for network improvement. Even billing, we are targeting to have 100% billing in a year. So there will be 100% billing, 100% revenue realization. And with the use of the smart technology, IPDS phase 2 and others, I think we'll able to move ahead, and we'll have a significant reduction in the AT&C losses. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we now move to the next speaker? This would be Shri Rajiv Agrawal, who is the Secretary of the Indian Captive Power Producers Association. So we will really understand the viewpoint of the captive power producers. Mr. Agrawal.
Good afternoon, everyone. Nice to talk to Dr. Parekh after so many years. So I'll straightway come to my presentation, which I had prepared, so that we have the holistic perspective of whatever is happening and whatever we are discussing right now. Just a sec, sir. Let me share the screen. Yeah, hope it's visible to everyone.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Sir, ICPPA, I just like to give a small brief. It's an apex body of captive power producers, and it was formed in 2005. Interestingly, it happened like when policy framework guided by states and central PSUs threatened the very existence of CPPs itself. And today, whatever topic we are discussing is something going very similar to that. that what is in the overall national interest. Now, what is happening is ICPP, like most of the captive power plants are being set up by either process critical industries or high consuming, high power consumption demand industries like steel, non-ferrous. We talked of aluminum, cement, chemicals, fertilizers, paper, anything where natural raw materials are being consumed to convert it to first level of goods. The power consumption is very high, and that is where we have to see as a nation where exactly we are able to stand. Now, we can see very clearly that CPPs have been sustaining the present situations and that is happening for past 25 years, where national economic growth, employment, GDP, forex, tax revenue, everything is getting improved despite power deficits, erratic power. And CPPs are not only for sake of environment or for cost, but it is for ensuring 24/7 power. It is for uninterrupted power, least cost, best quality power, with least losses and wastages for the nation so far. That's what CPPs has been doing. Some of the points have already been discussed, and I appreciate that part. Now, if we look at the threat perspective and where the nation would be losing, everyone knows about the state of DISCOMs, very high dismal financial performance, high dependence on subsidies, and where even captive power and industries are subsidizing them through the nose, seeking interest. Like what has been the mission, what we are seeing is that somewhere push industries and commercial users to switch to grid so that DISCOMs can earn maximum cost from them. And for that reason, different negative things have been happening, like obstructing open access, seeking CPP closure. On the central level, it's surprising that ministries are working in silos. Power Ministry says that yes, CPPs are needed for the nation, and Electricity Act 2003 works for that. Whereas coal policies, they are supporting inefficiencies of PSUs. Very high discriminated prices for CPP and industries. And now what we are looking at the coal block auction, sorry to say, it may not be the view of association per se, but then as a nation, when we look at that, this whole policy is supporting highest price linked to imported landed price parity. There is no concern for how India is going to be competitive, just for the sake of transparency. And the transparency can also be achieved through different tools. Now, this is also getting somewhere very clear that there has been environmental lobbies, there has been debates on renewable versus thermal, but thermal reactive power is needed for the grid stability. And also there are times international agendas which gets linked to the Indian growth story. So we have to look at all these perspectives so we have to look at all these perspectives when we are talking of captive power. I'm not getting into the definition, but definitely 92 onwards, when IPP failed to take off, CPPs gave the required impetus to the industrial growth story. And the best or worst part is that CPP have very deep cascading and bullwhip effect on the growth statistics, being the first link in the value chain. Now, when the cost of goods produced from raw material goes costly, everything else in the industry and for the nation goes for a toss. It's almost like 65 to 70% of total CPP capacity comes from thermal. And in terms of like very interesting thing is that whatever is the CPP capacity, that equates to 71% of industrial consumption for the nation. And if we talk of closing down CPPs, there is a problem with that. And what we have observed, that CPP capacity addition has got a direct correlation with the national growth. The statistics we can see, like from CA and Central Statistics Organization, once we marry these two data, we are able to see this trend. Now, a few points what has been discussed and our point of concern before I go forward, like whatever was being discussed, I just put a few points. I got a personal feeling that Indian global competitiveness is always getting a back foot. And this is evident from ever increasing import-export imbalance. PM has given a call that, okay, now on 15th of August, that India should be a global manufacturer. We are already talking of Atmanirbhar Bharat. But whether whatever we are talking of is going to really take care of the things. Now, if we look at, will discoms or grid will be able to guarantee 100% of production loss and will be reimbursed, will be ready to reimburse to the industry. That is the reliability which is required before we even talk of, or we start talk of CPP closing down for the sake of environment or for any other reason or for any of the lobbying. Now, captive is not standalone. And as you have said that it has been, cogeneration has been excluded from the study. Now, once there is a generalization and there is a, now these are, I always prefer to call it half truths or half lies, which skew the whole study and skew the decision making. Now, as of now, industry is cross subsidizing the rest of the nation. And also there is a false narrative coming that Indian coal is subsidized. This is what we always hear from global people. Now, is it so? Probably because India is depending on CIL monopoly. That is why they are able to say so. And now when this coal block auctions will come, which will, which are going to promote only oligopoly and not the free market, then again, it's going to be the same story. And what I'm trying to say is that if we are able to switch to reverse auction for coal blocks, I'll show you how exactly it's going to change the whole perspective. Then whatever coal will be available, that coal will be market-based coal and not the, which people cannot accuse us of giving subsidized coal for the power generation and for the industry. Another interesting part is that renewable is still non-firm power and it cannot replace thermal. It cannot provide the reactive power which is required for grid stability and for so many other technical reasons. Now, I'll not spend much time on these things what I had prepared earlier, but maybe some things I would have spoken now. Now, this is something very important. Domestically produced energy is unaffordable for nation, both for industry as for poor. Our power prices are highest in the global bracket. Now, if this is going to happen and if we are going to add whatever load in the name of environment without actually taking care of removing those costs. Now, if we are able to remove those costs, then definitely sufficient funds would be available for industry and for the nation to spend and take care of emissions. But today, this particular simple example, in USA, homes get power at 12 cents per unit. That comes to around 7.8 rupees on dollar exchange. But on purchasing power parity basis, which is the true representation of the comparisons, global comparisons, it is 2 rupee 20 paisa. Whereas so-called subsidized power in India is being supplied at 4 rupee to 6 rupee. Right here in my home, I get subsidized power at average 9 rupee a unit cost. This is what is happening. And this is what I'm talking of. Whereas in case of USA, industries get for say 6-7 cents, which comes to around 1 rupee 11 paisa on purchasing power parity. Now, if and unless each and every study and each and every government policy compare apples to apples, things are going to be a disaster for the nation. And I'm using the word disaster for the nation. Now, this is another example of across, whether it's USA, Canada, or even BRICS nation, on PP, like what are the PPP multipliers? There, someone if says, okay, 3, someone if says 4, doesn't make a difference as far as India is concerned. And you can see very clearly that at PPP basis, where do India stands? Now, Again, coming back to the coal blocks and how the mining is taking place, how whether it is IPP or CPP or state or private sector, how India has been burdened with such high cost. Everywhere, private sector mining cost in India is 3 to 25 rupees to 550 rupees per ton. That is comparable on PPP basis with Chinese mining cost at pit head. All the Coal India, their MDO contracts are also in this range. It means that is the firm, I can say, firm price for coal availability at some profits. You can understand the coal should be available, say 400 rupees to 600 rupees. Whereas it is being sold 1500 to 2300 rupees per ton. That is 4 to 5 times possible price. On that, you add abnormally, absurdly high railway cost. Where do we stand? And it's again a vicious cycle. Railway get costly power, so increase the freight, and then that increases the cost of power. Now, everywhere we are talking of cheap coal, but whatever we are actually giving to the nation, is it the cheap coal? Now, next point is very important. When this proposed forward auction of coal blocks is linked to high CIL prices, we are also finding is very interesting thing is that whatever price has been defined by the index, that is around 150 to 190% higher than Coal India prices. So if we are going to create monopolistic and oligopolistic coal market, which is the base price, where is the money available for spending in the development, in the environment? Now, this is the very datum line I will like to put that if we are able to achieve that, probably some of these things I have already spoken. Just very recently, there was some discussions about how exactly we are handling the environment or how the messy it is happening. Now, shifting of pollution load, whatever is happening so far, example is coal washing. It was happening like for many years, there were policies that until this coal is washed, you cannot move. But what ultimately everyone realized that it was only shifting the pollution load from coal consumers to coal producer state. Something very similar happening with SO2, FGD. There is a huge discussion, debates, but no one is actually talking of what is the impact on the forest because of limestone mining. What is the impact when limestone is converted into gypsum and CO2 is released? And availability of proper grade limestone is not there in the nation. There's hardly 0.1%, which power has to compete with cement, irrespective of whether it's captive power or power by the grid. Now, Indian coal is very low in sulfur. So generally this is not a problem. Now the problem is for some specific points. Another point is gypsum. Whatever is going to be produced, it cannot be disposed of. It's going to be another catastrophe. So what I'm trying to say that whenever we are talking of power, whenever we are talking of pollution and nature, we have to be balanced in our discussion. Like what I'm observing over every year, every passing year, industry is becoming more and more responsible. They are taking off a lot of proactive steps from their side, but still there is a general mistrust. Now, there is ever increasing burden on industry versus others. CPP is as I've already said, CPP is cross-subsidizing coal costs. CPP is subsidizing power cost to others. There is a higher RPO obligation. There is a there's another thing like PAT scheme. Then there are another issues like additional power, additional tariff, additional taxes which are being put on the captive power. So what exactly are we trying to achieve out of this whole mess? Another issue, what I was attending one discussion just 2 days back, it was it came out very clearly that there is a disconnect. Policies and laws are being made without proper data because someone has made a study, someone has petitioned the High Court, Supreme Court, and there is a policy and law making based on that. There is no concern there is no availability of, say, like FGD technology in India. It is not affordable. If we have to import at least 30 to 40% of it has to be imported, and that too from China. Now, what we are expected to do with China in today's circumstances, not to import, then where do we stand? Another is, there is a generalization. Anything which is done and then generalize it, convert it to something, make it half truth or half lie. Now, there is a problem of localized nature, but it is superimposed and implemented as a wider ill. Now that has to be done.
Agrawal, we are going too much over the time. Can you please make it
I'll
brief?
be just maybe another minute or so. I'll be winding up. Now there is also something very interesting. Very senior bureaucrats, after they come out of services, they start speaking something what others are speaking. Now, the trend is changing. I'm seeing in today's seminar, lot many bureaucrats from Orissa are speaking what should be the truth and what is actually needed, the balanced approach what is needed. Now, if we are able to do with everything across the globe, across the nation, probably we can achieve what we want to do. Thank you.
Thank you for a very, for giving us the viewpoint of captive power plants. And there are some very interesting points you made. One of the points is that the coal market is very distorted. And I'm sorry, I regret that our recommendations of the integrated energy policy about making coal market competitive has not been really fully implemented. Can we go to the next speaker, Shri Pavin Verma, who is the Chief Operations Commercial of Tata Power Center, Central Odisha Distribution Limited, TPCODL. Mr. Agrawal. Mr. Verma.
Mr. Parvin Verma has not been able to join, so we will have Mr. V.K. Agarwal now. And Mr. Chaudhary.
Okay, Mr. V.K. Agarwal, Technical Director, SARI EI Irade, Ex-Executive Director, Power Systems Operations Corporation. Mr. Agarwal.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Looking at the paucity of the time, straight away I'll come to the point. Basically, the subject is adopting energy and power sector to meet the NDC targets. So basically, ultimately, the objective is how we can reduce the carbon footprints. Before going into the exact point issues, I'll just recapitulate the installed capacity, generating capacity in Odisha. Basically, hydro constitutes around 24% of the total capacity, around 2,200 megawatt, and RE around 6%, that is 450 megawatt, and rest is coal-based thermal generation. And now, if we try to look at the specific points that how we can reduce the carbon footprints, I'll just go point by point. I have 4 points what I would like to share. The first point is, if we want to reduce the carbon footprints, the immediate point is increasing share of renewable energy. That is a direct point, but of course it will require some capex, etc. And as Vinay had also shared in his presentation, basically the RE potential, land is coming in forests and agriculture area. So that is one of the challenge. So what can be the solution for that could be, the avenues can be found out if we can come up with rooftop solar stations. If we can have those type of things, so possibly the land issue can be addressed to certain extent. And then one of the speaker, basically he has mentioned about the small hydropower stations, around 150 megawatt capacity or so, also that was also indicated. So one is the rooftop solar, and the second is the smaller hydropower stations, like if we can look for those things, perhaps that would be a fast achieving targets. And when we are talking of the small hydropower stations, maybe some sort of pondage, if it can be thought of, so that it would be very, very useful for the balancing purpose. It will have very high value also. So some sort of pondage is there, and if it is some type of pumped hydro, then the advantage would be multiple. So this is one point. Regarding the other points, point number 2, what I would say, again, it's a low-hanging fruit sort of thing. That could be 2 points could be there. One is the demand side management, and second is the reduction in the AT&C losses. Again, Vinay stated around 50% or so the losses are there. So they can be, efforts can be made to reduce those. And demand side management, I think something can be done, time of the metering and all those things. They may not require much of capex, etc., but the change in the policies, some change in the metering principles, etc., that would be required. The results would be slow, but it would be without much of capex, and that is an achievable point. So that is the point number 3. Second, the third point what I would like to mention is about the thermal, because thermal constitute around 70% of the installed capacity in the Odisha. So what can be done is always the efforts can be made for increasing the efficiency of the thermal units. And I'll give you an example. Recently, CRC is coming out with a draft paper about the ramping. They are incentivizing the generating stations with better ramping rate, etc. So those type of incentivization, etc., because 70% is the thermal capacity, some sort of incentivization can also be done by the State Regulatory Commission and for the state plants and IPPs in the state, and efficiency can be achieved. Definitely that would reduce the carbon footprint. Related points are, in case of thermal, is there are other 2 small points are there. At the central level, we have the security constraint economic dispatch, where again this is for increasing the efficiency in the system, at the same time bringing the economy. So almost on the similar pattern, the state can also look into the security constraint economic dispatch model, how they can use it in Odisha. And the other related point is Santulan. There is another scheme, Santulan. It is Forum of Regulators. Already they have come out with the paper. And incidentally, our friend Mr. B.B. Mehta, he has come from Gujarat to Odisha, compliments to him. And he has been working on those things, well aware of these particular aspects, very, very high go-getter. So those type of Santulan balancing, those type of things, because there is a good quantum of thermal capacity, the state can look into that Santulan scheme, where some of the thermal generation, spare thermal generation, which is not being utilized, that can be used for balancing the grid. So I'll stop here, and these are the some of the points I think they can be contributed for reducing the carbon footprints. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Agrawal. May I now request Chandra Kiran, Dr. Chandra Kiran, who is a consultant on the project on the power sector, and he's an assistant professor, Department of Forest Economics at Swedish University of Agricultural Sciences. Dr. Chandra Kiran.
Thanks, Dr. Kirit Parekh. I plan to be brief. My knowledge of the Odisha electricity sector is relatively minimal. I'm happy to have been part of this event. I've learned quite a bit about Odisha's electricity sector today. I'm more a resource and energy economist, so I would rather focus on some longer term market questions and not so much on the operational details. I mean, it's been quite interesting listening to the diverse operational perspectives, but I'd like to start with the IRADE presentation, which was pretty comprehensive. I think I like that a lot. So very quickly, I guess I see different kinds of issues being discussed sort of together. One is how the electricity market in Odisha may or should or will evolve in the next 10 to 20 years. This overlaps with the renewable energy, the question, and the NDC contributions. So I guess I have a few reflections, not so much specific suggestions, but I'll start with what struck me quite interesting, that Odisha seems to have a lot of power to export, excess power, if you will. I mean, this I'm sure varies over time, but apart from exporting power, I'm curious to know if, given Odisha's hydro capacity, have there been many studies on pumped hydro potential? Because that, in the medium run, can be a nice energy storage solution. for Odisha. I don't know if there have been enough studies, but this is something that struck me as being quite interesting. So I'm also curious about the whole question of RPOs. I'm a bit uncertain about who has RPOs in Odisha. Are some of the captive generators also obligated entities? And if so, I'm curious to know how, if most of their obligations are purchased through, are satisfied through purchase of RECs, or do the captive producers have a medium-term plan? On the other hand, I'm also interested to understand how the RPO obligations for these entities will evolve in the next 5 to 10 years. If these obligations will become tighter and tighter, that might act as sufficient incentive for them to voluntarily get rid of older power plants that are less efficient in the first place without necessarily any forceful retirements. That's one direction of thought. The other direction of thought that is related is, I think in the last slide, Vinay had a point about cap and trade kind of schemes. Now, of course, the economist in me will like cap and trade schemes. They tend to be efficient. But I think that is more than, there will be implications for what kinds of plants will be closed. Essentially, the older plants will probably be forced out unless they have very, very high PLFs, is my guess. So in practice, a cap and trade scheme with 20 plants might look like an administratively mandated closure of the least efficient. It might still be preferred to an administratively mandated closure, but I'm not sure from Mr. Rajiv Agarwal's presentation at least, that will gain acceptance. So I'm not sure how feasible a very small cap and trade scheme is. I mention this because in the context of my own knowledge of the European emission trading scheme, as well as some basic understanding of the Northwest US so-called REGI scheme, some sort of a cap and trade, if you will, in the Northeast US. Many of these, even the EU ETS, which has often been proclaimed a big success, has been a result of many compromises, with the most polluted often being excluded the first few years. It's only in the phase 3, I think, that many of the real polluters have been sort of, have actually faced the true costs of pollution. So in this context, I guess one thing to think about is that any kind of a cap and trade scheme will involve real pain in the short term, both to the producers themselves and possibly to the industries. So that's something I think one might want to think through carefully to understand what the objectives are. And I think this might be connected with the renewable obligations, in the sense that if the captive producers know they have obligations today and will have increasingly stringent obligations in the future, a cap and trade scheme might not necessarily be needed, because the RPOs themselves might force out at least a lot of the most polluting sources. So, I mean, I don't remember who it was who brought this up, but I have rarely understood the distinction between solar and sort of having the RPO the obligation distinction technology-wise separately for wind and solar. But that apart, it seems like India in general, and probably Odisha in particular, might want to look into the question of rooftop solar a bit more, in the sense that if the potential for that is relatively high, that can sort of represent a win-win for the consumer as well, to the extent the consumer is incentivized to feed in solar generation. That can also potentially reduce the average cost of power. Although the effect, I'm not sure that the effect on the DISCOMs themselves will be positive, because it seems like there are a lot of PPAs and existing stock that has to be catered to. But again, it seems like one way to move forward with solar at least is to think about carefully rooftop solar. And the second thing, which may already have occurred, and pardon me for that if it has, is solar parks or aggregate solar plants, I guess. Again, it's what I find quite interesting is that in Sweden and in the Nordic countries in general, right now it is very sunny, but there is a very, very strong seasonality. And even in with the winter being pretty much sun-free, despite this, there is Swedish and Nordic governments have generally promoted rooftop solar. It hasn't taken off in a big way yet, and incentives are relatively moderate, but still they have had a continuous history, and I think there is talk of increasing it. So I'm just curious, not to say that Odisha government should start subsidizing rooftop solar, but just to look at the potential of rooftop solar to contribute to at least the solar component of the RPO. And I'm also curious about two other things that that struck me in the in the IRADE presentation. Given that Odisha has a lot of thermal and hydro already and is unable to meet its obligations for renewables, I'm curious why they see increased thermal capacity in the future, even if it is more efficient. I didn't quite understand the logic there. It would be good in general, I think, for a pretty coal plus hydel heavy Odisha to think about essentially formulate a way of planning for the future that explicitly considers that RPOs and Odisha share in them might become more stringent in the future. And in these futures, I'm not sure that additional thermal, unless it is to replace existing very old thermal, might make as much sense. But this is also difficult to predict, both because the national targets themselves are, I guess, moving in the future, but also because that, to my mind at least, depends on the market structure. That what do the panelists think Odisha's electricity market will look like in 10 years? Or I use the word market very loosely because I know there is not that much of a market, but to the extent Odisha is moving towards a more market-oriented system in the next 10 to 20 years, it's not clear that, I think it would be important to have capacity planning for the future reflect this fact that one may not want to plan for too much new thermal capacity with both a more market-oriented future and increasingly stringent requirements for renewables in the next 10 to 20 years. And I guess the final reflection I have is that both increased more market-oriented electricity system as well as emission trading tends to take longer than one imagines and tends to be more painful than one often imagines. At least that's been international experience. So I guess given this, I personally think it would be very interesting to see what the perspective of the Odisha, the panelists here and in general the Odisha plan is for the next 10 to 20 years on electricity, renewable or otherwise, and electricity markets. I think I would like to see a bit more of that discussion emerge, because that should potentially inform what kind of policies one would like. Because one would ideally like any policies proposed to fit easily with the future rather than to sort of have to be corrected. I guess I will stop here and thank the panelists for sort of a very informative session, and Dr. Kirit Parikh and Jyoti Parikh for inviting me.
Thank you, Chandrakiran. I think we are almost an hour behind our schedule, so I would not really ask people to comment and give comments on other people's comments. But let me conclude. Let me just summarize few points that has emerged from this. One of them is this, can we give captive power RPO obligations, and how do we enforce them? Second thing is we have to understand the importance and the viewpoint of the captive power plant, because they have really, there is a logic for why people want to go for captive. Mr. Agrawal really clearly pointed out what the issues are, and I think they should be factored in any kind of policy. The third thing I think emerges is that having a separate RPO for solar and wind, etc., doesn't make sense. We should have really a non-technology discriminating RPO obligation, so that things like small hydro, etc., can be all be incorporated into this. I think perhaps it's already moved into that direction, but I'm just repeating some of these things. And I think finally, I would say that certainly the coal market rationalization, Mr. Agrawal made a very strong plea for that, and I think much of it what he's saying is valid. And I think one really needs to look at these policies all over again. With that, I think I will